Welcome to my presentation on Rosalind Baxandall and Linda Gordon on the Women's Liberation Movement by Rachel Degard. This is Rosalind Baxandall. She was an American historian of women's activism and an active New York City feminist. Unfortunately, she passed away at the age of 76 because of cancer. When she passed away, Linda Gordon wrote a tribute to her on jewishwomensarchives.org and described Baxandall's best features as a friend. Gordon said that she was driven by values that she inherited from her parents, but equally by her own formidable stores of energy. A drive that was always directed outward, toward others, toward friendship, toward greater social justice. She also said that she was among the first to grasp the importance and radicalism of feminist analysis of personal issues such as reproduction control, violence, body image, marriage, and love. There's actually a fundraiser on the website that she made this tribute. It's titled Help Us Elevate the Voices of Jewish Women, and the donations ensure that Jewish women's achievements and voices are celebrated and counted in the larger narrative. It creates engaging programs and was put together to give these women a voice. This is Linda Gordon. She's an American feminist and historian, born in Chicago, Illinois. She's currently 80 years old, and she attended Yale University and Swarthmore College. She's received a few awards and nominations, including the National Book Award for History. She's a professor of history and University Professor of Humanities at New York University. Her early books focused on the historical roots of social policy issues, particularly as they concern gender and family issues. In her later books, she explored other genres of history. These are some of the learning objectives. Explain how the women's liberation movement transformed American society. Outline what motivated these women to become part of the women's liberation movement and what they did to overcome these challenges. Determine the difference between the social and political roots of women's liberation. Determine where you see evidence of backlash against these women. Evaluate what challenges continue to linger to this day. This is the main idea and the evidence that supports it. It was said that the women's movement had no progress at all. Baxandall and Gordon want everybody to understand that small progress isn't equal to the absence of progress. In the 1960s, a sense of unity came about the public, which brought together many other campaigns for social justice that challenged conformity and hierarchical authority. This stimulated mass participation that committed themselves to direct but nonviolent actions, on page 709. There were misconceptions of where the progress lies. On page 706, there were negative biases about the movement. Some said the movement was overly hostile and conservative, or that it was demonized as an act against nature and that they were doing the work of the devil. Some considered it a failure because it didn't have anything to do with social change, but a search for self-transformation and power. Feminist activists that spoke out were disappointing and ruined the possibility of change, which would make the movement incomplete to the final amount of success that was made. There was a misconception on the progress because there were also lack of records. On page 706, the Baxandall and Gordon say that the media and conservative sources portrayed the movement as being obsolete. Feminism was considered to be a lifestyle or a personal transformation, and a digression from traditional politics. Ideas that were attempted to be shoved down people's throats said feminism had nothing to do with politics or social change, in which was claimed. Baxandall and Gordon want to show that even though we have made progress, there's still a long way to go. On page 709, Baxandall and Gordon show that women still experienced inequality in many ways by those who did not want to accept the change. Because of these movements, women learned to think critically about social structures and ideologies. They also learned to talk the language of freedom and tyranny, democracy and domination, power and oppression, and they applied these concepts to question their own secondary status. Baxandall and Gordon say that this combination of raised aspirations and frustration gave rise to the rebellion. I also included a quote at the bottom of the page. It says, "This cultural rebellion had transformative potential and gave rise to some serious political changes," on page 710. Here are a few quotes and examples from the article that give an insight on the impacts that the women's liberation movement made on other groups that found their voice and finally spoke out with confidence. It was not only women that were heard at this time. On slide 7, I wanted to include one of my favorite quotes from the article. It's explaining that even though we have a long way to go to make progress, that there has still been progress achieved. It's a little pep talk that Baxandall and Gordon gave in their article, and it starts by the quote, "Feminism is by no means dead," on page 710. Here are some discussion questions to better understand the article. Did Baxandall and Gordon have a well-supported argument? If not, explain why and how they could improve. What are other social issues and factors that have put a stop to making changes toward equality? Does this history still have an impact on women's inequality today? What impact do public figures have on integrating new policies? How does it affect the way that we move forward to solve these issues? Here is the student activity. The goal is to implement your new ideas and perspectives through research with your group of choice and help make a difference. Associate an experience that you have noticed challenges with inequality that relates to the ideas that were integrated into the women's liberation movement from the article. It can be something you have personally experienced or seen a friend or family member experience. Conduct research on this problem. Focus on other movements that are currently active or have failed to meet their goals and work toward a long-term solution that positively develops the deficiencies you recognized in the group that you researched. Develop a small marketing project to promote a campaign about the issue. Use the mind map method to organize your team's responsibilities. Identify goals, develop objects, identify potential community partners and resources or sponsors that can help financially. Identify a target audience and a marketing budget. If you were to move forward with this progress, you would be able to make an impact on whatever social change you felt was necessary. This brings us to our works cited page. It looks like a paragraph, but I just had a lot of sources that I used for photos and other information that I used for the presentation.